The 12 Labors of Hercules. After killing his family in an insane rage induced by Hera, Hercules went to Uretheus, the king of Mycenae, and offered to be his slave. He was prepared to accept the most difficult tasks as punishment for his crime. Uretheus invented 12 tasks known as the 12 labors. They were all nearly impossible to accomplish, even for the strongest man on earth. The first labor was to kill the Nemean lion. In the Nemean valley near Mycenae, a terrible lion ranged. Hercules went there, taking his bow and quiver of arrows and the big club he always had with him. He found the lion's den, but the beast was out hunting, so Hercules waited. At the end of the day, the lion came back licking its slavering chops, spotted with the blood of its prey. Hercules shot an arrow, but it bounced off the beast's hide, for this was a special lion. It could not be killed with conventional weapons. Only Hercules' incredible strength could conquer the beast. He slammed his club over the lion's head. The club splintered, but momentarily stunned the beast. Hercules jumped on its back, worked down the hind legs with his feet, grabbed the lion's neck with his hands, drew back the head, and strangled him. He cut off the tawny hide with the lion's own claws and took it back with him, but would not give it up to Uretheus. He had won it as a trophy of war in a fair fight, which none could deny, and he wore it afterwards, with the head on his own head like a helmet. The second labor concerned the Lernaean Hydra. This was a beast, a big snake with 9 heads. The Hydra lived way off in the swamps and marshes of Argos, near the sea. Hercules rode to the place in his chariot, driven by his nephew Iolaus. When they got there, the hero tried several weapons: arrows, his club, and a sickle. He cut off one head after another, but whenever he had severed one, 2 more grew in its place. A huge crab came to help the Hydra, and young Iolaus ran up to help his uncle. But the heroes, though holding their own, were not getting anywhere until Hercules suddenly became inspired. He told his nephew to build up a fire and set up torches. As his uncle lopped off a hydra head, Iolaus cauterized the neck with fire to close it so that no new head could grow. After cutting off the last head and searing the neck with fire, they buried the head under a rock. The marsh still breeds snakes, but they are just ordinary ones, mean but not monsters. The heroes killed the Hydra's crab ally too, and it became a constellation in the sky, part of the zodiac group that terrified Phaethon. The third labor was to capture the Arcadian Deer. This deer was female, a doe, but it bore antlers of gold and had feet of bronze. Being sacred to Artemis, she wandered free all over wooded Arcady, and it took Hercules a year of hunting before he caught her. On the return trip, with the live deer strapped to his back, he ran into Artemis, who angrily asked what he was doing with her doe. Hercules answered meekly that he had no choice. It was the will of Zeus, expressed through the oracle, that as a penance he obey Lord Uretheus in all things. So he made his peace with Artemis, who was not easily appeased. In the fourth labor, Hercules took on the Aramanthian Boar. This beast was a menace to the whole country: people, livestock, and crops. Hercules' task was to capture the boar and take it to King Uretheus. On his way to find the boar, Hercules had to pass through the land of the centaurs, those rather engaging creatures with a man's head and shoulders and a horse's body. They had the strength and speed of horses and the wisdom of men, but most of them were more beasts than men. There was one, however, Pholus by name, who was friendly. When Hercules arrived, Pholus invited him into his cave for a drink of punch and a good meal. The hero thanked the centaur for his hospitality and went in. Pholus served him the punch. It was delicious. Hercules had never tasted anything like it before. The aroma spread near and far, and the other centaurs came galloping up. When they discovered Hercules enjoying their special punch, they attacked him. Pholus, scared nearly to death, ran off, so Hercules had to take on these wild beasts alone. They went at him with torn-up trees, big boulders, torches, and axes. Their mother, a big storm cloud, poured down a gray fog like pea soup that blinded Hercules and made the cave floor so slippery he could hardly stand up. But he persisted in the fight, wiping out a good many of the centaurs and driving the rest away. Hercules continued his search for the wild boar. When he found the boar, he chased it all around the bushes in the snow until the brute died of pure exhaustion. Hercules threw it across his back like a large rucksack and tramped into the hall where King Uretheus was waiting, always ready with more work for him to do. The fifth labor, the chore of cleaning out the Auggian stables, was less dangerous than some of the others, but in its way even more arduous. Augeas was the king of neighboring Elis. His stable, with thousands of cattle, had not been cleaned for 30 years, so it was incredibly filthy. Hercules was told to clean it all up in a single day. Hercules, for once, was shrewd. He said he'd do the job, but Augeas would have to give him 1/10 of the cattle. Augeas agreed. Now Hercules proved himself to be a clever engineer, a master of hydraulics. There were 2 rivers nearby, one on each side of the stable. Hercules knocked out parts of the stable walls at either end and diverted the course of both rivers toward the upper end of the barn. Following the natural line of gravity, the rivers ran downhill, converged, and ripped through the stalls, washing away all the dirt and filth. Augeas, however, went back on his promise of the cows. Hercules did not argue. He was still consumed with working on his penance. But later, he took his revenge by seizing riches from Elis, which he used to found the ancient Olympic Games. The sixth labor was to eliminate the Stimphalon Birds. These were man-eating birds with claws, beaks, and wings of bronze. They came out of Lake Stymphalus in Arcadia, swarmed down the fields, and destroyed crops like locusts. For this task, Hercules received help from the goddess Athena, who respected him for his manliness and his good heart. She gave him a big brass rattle that sounded like a whole band of cymbals. Assaulted by the tremendous noise, the bronze birds flew off, and Hercules shot them with his poisoned arrows. The seventh labor was to deliver the Cretan bull to King Uretheus. The Cretan bull belonged to King Minos of Crete. It was a beautiful creature, but it had gone crazy, and King Minos was anxious to get rid of it. Hercules went to Crete, captured the mad bull, and took it back to Mycenae. The next labor, the eighth, was to capture the wild mares of Diomedes, a barbarian king of Thrace. His horses were man-eaters, and so wild that Diomedes had to tether them to their brass mangers with chains of iron. Hercules organized a troop of young men and led them to Thrace, where they made a massive assault on Diomedes' citadel, which soon fell. They captured the cruel and savage king, and the horses, no longer threatened by this evil man, calmed down and were easily led to Uretheus. Labor number 9 involved the beautiful belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, a tribe of women warriors who fought on horseback. Hercules raised another army of volunteers and led it across the Aegean Sea into Asia Minor. At first, he tried tough diplomacy and simply demanded the belt. Surprisingly, Hippolyta seemed willing to give it up. She may have been impressed by his brisk and brusque young soldier. The other Amazons, however, thought their queen was being taken captive, so they attacked the Greeks. It was quite a battle. Europe against Asia, men against women. But Hercules' men won, and Hercules brought the broad belt back. The 10th labor involved the longest journey to an island, Uretheus, located off the Spanish coast, where there lived a dreadful monster, Geryon, who had 3 bodies joined at the waist. Another, lesser monster guarded his cattle, along with a 2-headed dog. These beasts were laying waste to all the lands in the area, creating a state of disorder without any effective government. Hercules' job was to bring back Geryon's cattle. On his way to battle the monster, Hercules built 2 gigantic pillars, one on either side of the straits that are now called Gibraltar, where the Mediterranean Sea meets the Atlantic Ocean. For thousands of years, these pillars were called the Pillars of Hercules. When he arrived on the island, he killed the 2-headed dog with his club, then killed the guardian monster and shot the 3-bodied Geryon with arrows. He drove the cattle back by a land route through Europe. He also taught the people of the island the ways of law and stable government, a great accomplishment for a man who had been a slow learner in school. The 11th labor was to fetch the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by the 3 fair daughters of Atlas, along with a great dragon. This task was even more difficult because he did not know exactly where the Hesperides were, so he had to hunt all over the known world and even into the unknown world. At first, he went the wrong way, to the east, as far as the Caucasus Mountains, where Prometheus, the great titan who gave fire to mankind, was still bound to the icy rock, still suffering terrible torments. Here, the anger of Hercules at the titan's unjust fate was a righteous anger, and it is here perhaps that he did his greatest deed, though it is not officially ranked with the 12. He set Prometheus free. Only the strongest man in the world, not even a god, could have done that. Hercules even proved to be a successful diplomat. He persuaded Zeus to take Prometheus back again and treat him kindly and receive him well at Olympus. Prometheus wished to return the favor as best he could. He counseled Hercules to find Atlas, his brother, and ask him where the apples were, since the Hesperides were his daughters. Hercules did so. He found the old Titan on his mountain in northwest Africa, holding up the sky. Hercules, in a friendly way, greeted him and asked directions. Atlas said, regretfully, that the exact location of the garden was a secret. But, he said, just hold up the sky for me, and I'll get the apples for you. Hercules agreed and took the skies on his shoulders, while Atlas, delighted to be free, ran off to fetch the apples. Holding up the heavens was a tough chore even for Hercules, and he began to wonder if perhaps he had made a mistake. But Atlas was true to his word. He brought the apples back. A little wistfully, he asked if he might deliver them to Uretheus. But Hercules was afraid that if Atlas went off with the apples, he would never come back, and then Hercules would have to hold up the skies until the end of time. So he asked the giant to hold up the sky for just a minute while he eased his shoulders. After all, he told him, even strong men need to rest. Atlas was not smart like his brother Prometheus. He had no foresight. So he agreed. Hercules put the sky back on the Titan's shoulders, picked up the apples, and took them back to Uretheus. For his 12th labor, Hercules was required to go down to Hades and fetch up Cerberus, the 3-headed dog who guarded the door. Pluto was willing to loan out his dog for a while, but forbade Hercules to use weapons. So the heroes grabbed the dog in his hands and gave him several good squeezes until he was tamed. Then he carried him to the upper world, showed him to Uretheus, and brought him back. With that, Hercules' labors were done.